This week, we meet a man who grew up in a broken household, but overcame it and was getting ready for spring training camp with the Atlanta Braves until he was attacked and couldn't pitch. Let's learn more about his ups and downs after I hit this music. Joining me this week is author of Wrestling with Demons and former WCW wrestler Mark Smith. Mark, thank you for coming on today.
Brother, it is such a pleasure. Thank you. And to all the listeners, I just want to say thank you and that today you're giving us a great gift. In the scheme of things, in the scheme of life rather, time is the one thing that we're always so uncertain about.
Yeah.
So when you're giving us your time, you're really blessing us. It's a sign of love. It's a sign of caring. I want you to know that we appreciate that, and I really appreciate you, Tim, and everyone listening.
Oh, thank you, Mark. And I'm really excited to hear your story because you have a great story of resilience, which pretty much a lot of people need to hear these days. And I'm excited to hear about it. I want to start with your growing up, your household. How was growing up as a child?
Growing up as a child, it was kind of wild and woolly, to be honest with you. My father had been beaten with chains. And of course, I'm 57, so when you talk about my dad, people did not talk about abuse or anything back in those days. So for him, it was something that he had to bear and deal with. Therefore, it was unprocessed. So the things would come out and, we would feel them. But growing up, when there's a sign of abuse, and I have to say my mother is wonderful, and I'm going to probably talk to her this afternoon. But abuse causes a kid to get lost. And what I mean by that is, where's the security? You ask at times, where's the love? You at times wonder, why do I hate? What's my purpose? Who cares? It brings up so many questions that growing up in that kind of atmosphere or environment, the uncertainties are so overwhelming that you literally feel like a leaf being tossed in the wind. That's what that kind of childhood, that's how it makes you feel.
Yeah. So growing up with your dad, when he would hit you, was it because you were acting up? Would there be a time he would just hit you for no reason?
Yeah, we would break out into sweats. When he would come home from the gas station, I would break out in a sweat. I'd automatically go into a depression slash fear mode because having those unprocessed feelings like he had, anything could pull that anger out. Because having unprocessed trauma, that means you've also got hidden anger. And I compare it to a champagne bottle where you put all the stuff down into the champagne bottle and the pressure is so hard or so much, and then you cork it. And when the pressure just gets so high, that cork's going to explode.
Yeah.
I hope that explains it pretty well,
Yep, it did. Um, so did the abuse continue all through high school? Did it stop at some point? Because obviously you must have you played sports like baseball in order to get to that training camp.
Well, I actually played like American Legion ball, different things, county type teams, that kind of thing. I broke a few strikeout records. I believe my best season, I was like either 7-2 or 9-2, had an ERA of around 2, and I'd struck out 167 batters, and I broke a national record. So, yeah, I don't even remember my dad seeing me play ball. And
Okay.
in wrestling, he only saw me wrestle one match.
Wow.
My mom, on the other hand, would be there anytime she could be. And for that, I deeply, I have a lot of gratitude.
Yeah. I don't want to make excuses for your dad at all. I'm not
No,
trying to do that to
please.
you.
I
But
love
but
him.
what
It's
I-
all
what
good.
but what I do want to ask, how was your dad's life raising you and your and his family? Was he just constant under stress from work? What was he going through?
He would go through bouts of depression.
Okay.
I don't know. I don't know. I cannot remember enough looking into the childhood years, back into the childhood years rather, if there there were signs of being bipolar. I think as quick as he could go up and down, there were probably things like that. And I mean, see, Tim, the way I look at it, even with my dad, you may have people that you like or dislike, you love or you don't love them at all. The thing is with every relationship, you can appreciate something. Either that person is going to show you how to be or how not to be. Now, he was my father. I love him. Could could I have killed him? Yes, at times. I was ready to. But I did love him, and I think a sign of my love for him was when he passed away, we actually uh he made his mind up on this little plot that machinery really couldn't get into. So my brother and I went and we dug his grave and we buried
Wow.
him with a shovel. That haunted me for a long time, but then I realized it was kind of an epiphany. I felt guilty for burying him, but then it hit me. It finally hit me that that was the last true act of love I could do for him to make sure that he was taken care of. So that, I'm at peace with everything. I mean,
Yeah.
I can talk about it. There are some of the things that somebody would say, "My Lord, how can you laugh about that?" Well, I'm at peace. You know, I myself, I feel like I've been forgiven. I've also learned how to forgive myself, and so I don't have a grudge against anybody.
Yeah. So after you experienced the abuse from your father, you were very close. You were invited to spring training camp for the Atlanta Braves.
Yeah, my
What happened?
stepdad. Well, my stepdad. My mom and dad finally got divorced, and frankly, it was best. And
Yeah.
she had married a fine man. I will tell you till today, he is a was a fine man. But his wife, first wife, had died of cancer. He began taking her pain pills, and by the time him and my mom got married, we didn't know it, but he was taking like 25, 30 Percodan and Percocet a day. Well, we're watching a Braves game one night, and he says, "Mark, I've seen you throw. You need to go up there." And the next day, we went outside, and I threw in one throw. I broke his finger. Didn't mean to do that. One season I actually broke my catcher's finger like 7 times.
Wow.
Okay, and so he says you're definitely going to that tryout. So I go. The old second baseman for the Atlanta Braves, Rod Gilbreth, tried me out. In fact, I talked to Rod about 2 years ago. I got in touch with him. I wanted to ask him a few questions. And he asked me, he says, "Mark, what all did you do at the tryout?" And I told him. He said, "You know what? I got your file in my attic. Still to today, my file is in his attic." He said, "You got your invite to spring training, didn't you?" I said, "Yes, sir, I did." He said, "Did you go?" I said, "No, sir, I couldn't." He said, "Why?" And this gets into what you were asking. My stepdad, on an occasion, he put down a lot of wine, several bottles mixed with all those pain pills. And I said something. I walked in and he was just bombed out of his gourd. Okay. And I said, "You're really too good for this. You you don't have to live like a bum." And boy, when I said that, he flew up and he started spitting in my face, going after me. And I just picked him up and I put him down. I felt something in my right hand that didn't feel right. About 2 weeks later, I'm going to work and I'm driving in a Chevy Chevette. Those big, sports cars, the Chevettes. You
Yep.
remember them, right? Well, a kid was driving a Ford LTD, drinking a Coca-Cola from McDonald's. Ran a stop sign, broadsided me, the driver's side door. And my right hand goes to the instrument panel and it starts bleeding and all. And finally, my mom, says, "You got to go to the doctor. We got to go to the doctor." And said it had torn so many nerves in this area of my hand that I would not be able to snap a curveball. And he was right. I lost my
Yeah.
curveball.
Oh man.
And a man cannot live in the major leagues with just a fastball.
Yep.
If you remember, Nolan Ryan could throw the ball 100 miles an hour, but Nolan Ryan had one of the best sliders and curveballs in professional baseball. And I knew I was done. Now, if you think about it, as a kid in the abuse, I felt lost. I did not really feel like I had a world of my own. Now, guess what? I'm lost. I lost baseball,
Yep.
and I have no world of my own. Things do repeat itself.
Yeah. So you lost your baseball. You lost your baseball. You couldn't play baseball anymore. How'd you find wrestling? Because you did wrestle when you were younger. So how'd you
Oh
find
yeah,
that
a lot
professional?
younger.
Yeah.
Uh, what happened was I grew up in a town in Georgia, and just so happened a boy named Mark Scarpa. I went to school with him. I knew Mark. He was a little bit of a troublemaker. He was kind of wild, but we were good friends. And Mark Scarpa and Mark Smith were always alphabetized together, in class.
Yep.
So we always got to talking. Well, he was the adopted son of Chief Jay Strongbow in the WWF.
Yep.
Well, Mark comes by the gas station one day, and I'm there, and I'm picking up, I don't know, or one of those car top carriers by myself, or pulling a 6x12 tandem trailer across the parking lot. He says, "My gosh, you're big." He says, "Mark, what's going on with you?" I said, "Man, I'm just working. I don't have no plans. I don't know what to do." And I noticed he's really jacked himself.
Yeah.
I said, "What have you been doing?" He said, "Well, I actually been up in Portland." I said, "Who, Don Owens?" He said, "Yeah, I've been working for Don. He pays well." I said, "Wow." Don Owens is a wrestling promoter. So we start talking. He says, "Tonight, let me come by and pick you up. I want to take you somewhere." So I go, "Okay." So Mark comes and gets me. We drive to the edge of these woods. He says, "Come on and come into the woods." I said, "Mark, I'm not going to repeat the movie Deliverance, okay? I'm not going into the woods." and he says, "Look, just shut up and come on." And we walk about 9 feet into the woods, and there's a wrestling ring just set up. I go, "My God, Mark, what are we doing here? Gonna have squirrel mania? What's going on?" And he says, "No." I said, "Get in the ring." He said, "Slam me." Boom, boom. He slams me. Boom, boom. We work for a little while. He says, "You need to get in this business." Well, Mark goes back up to work for Don Owens and then works over in WWF at the time. During that time, a fellow in our hometown come to find out he's an old wrestling manager. One of my kinfolk takes me over to meet him. His name's Bill Arnold. And I walk in, and he's sitting back in his chair like this with a hat on, wearing black. "Mark Smith, so what are you doing today?" Skinny as a rail. I mean, he looked like he came off The Sopranos, and he was sitting there, I guess, for somebody to come and ask him for a favor. Okay. Well, anyhow, I tell him, he says, "So you want to try it?" And he had this long draw. I say, yes, sir. He says, hold on a minute. So he raises back up in his chair, calls a guy, go to the city. It was like a park, and it was a building where there were basketball goals and things like that. He says, go to City Park, and there'll be a fella named Art Pritz to meet you. Yes, sir. So I show up. Art Pritz is there. All right, Mark, let's see what you got. I said, okay, what are we going to do? He says, we're going to take bumps and everything. You see that 1 inch mat over there? I go, yes, sir. He says, bring it over here and put it on this concrete floor. For months, I'm talking body slams, backdrops. Everything I took was on a concrete floor with a 1 inch mat.
Oh, wow.
That is the way wrestling used to be. They wanted to see if you were tough enough, and they wanted to make it so tough that they would be surprised if you came the second day. Well, I'm going to tell you what, brother. I walked away and I could have played Jingle Bells because everything in me was rattling. I mean, it was hurting. I wake up the next morning and I look like Gumby, but I just can't move. And so, but I go back, go back, go back. All of a sudden, Bill Arnold calls me and says, we're going to have a match this weekend. I've already called one of the original mathematics that I used to manage. He's going to come out of retirement and work with you this Saturday. And that show happened to be was running AWA Vergania, okay?
Okay.
And Jerry Blackwell, it was Jerry Blackwell and I think Ken Timms that were kind of running the show. But we got in and I got my butt kicked like I should, with a smile. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you,
Yep.
sir. Every time it happens. And they say, okay, we're going to keep running. So I did a few more matches with Jim Fordham, the guy that came out of retirement. And then I was the lone mathematic. That is how I broke into the business. It was very old school. They tried to run me out. And then I did not, you know, go to tryouts for WWE or WWF at that time or whatever. I'll tell you what, I paid my dues the old fashioned way.
Yeah.
And you were lucky if you drove somewhere, and you were lucky if you got $5 and a hot dog.
Wow. So how did you make it into the so you were into sorry. How did you make it in the NWA? It's NWA, right? National
Yeah,
Wrestling Alliance.
NWA to begin with. Yes.
Yes.
What happened was I got a phone call. Somebody said, "Do you want to work for Dusty Rhodes?" Because he was doing the booking in Atlanta. I go, "Okay, yeah, sure." They said, "Well, we need you for Saturday morning TVs." I said, "Okay." And it was so weird because when you walk into a big arena, you go in a back way and you're lower than all the stands and everything. You know what the typical look is like.
Yep.
Well, in that building, we would have to take an elevator, get off the elevator, and there's the ring. And on each side of the ring, like 4 or 5 rows of chairs. And where they spoke and did interviews were over here. The ring was 50 foot away, maybe at most. Dressing rooms, get dressed in a dingy dressing room and then come out like you've made it to the big time. That's what
Yeah.
TV was like. You just work your tail
Yeah.
off. But it was merely by a phone call. And then going from that to WCW, what happened was that uh, Jody Hamilton had become a booker for WCW. Ted Turner had just bought it, the NWA.
Yep.
So Jody Hamilton calls me. He says, and I'm living close to Atlanta, Georgia, and there's a Cleveland, Georgia, where a lot of small time wrestling goes on. They draw really well. Jody and Jody would run Cleveland. So Jody calls me. He says, Mark, he said, I can you work tonight? I say, yes, sir. He says, I need you to be in Cleveland. I said, okay. Well, what time do you want me there? He said, as soon as you can get here. I said, well, Miss Jody, it only takes me about 2 hours. He said, Mark, you don't understand. I said, no, sir, I don't. Please tell me. He said, I need you to come to the 12th floor of CNN Center, pick up your airplane tickets, go to the airport, and get on that flight to Cleveland, Ohio. I'm in Cleveland, Ohio. WCW is here tonight, and this is where you're going to be working.
Wow.
So I'm like, okay, what do I do? Do I pack first? What do I do? And I think my voice starts breaking like this. I'm like, thank you, Mr. Jody. I'm breaking up and like that. And, you know, I don't know if I'm sweating or if I'm losing control of my bodily functions and wetting myself. I have no idea. I mean, my life has just changed, right? Lord knows. I get up to there. I get up there. Well, first, let me tell you, I was like, four, from my home then to CNN Center was about 40 miles. I at
Yeah.
least got 20 miles down the road before my rear end caught up with the rest of me. I mean, I was flying, okay? And so I walk in to the arena there in Cleveland, Ohio. Sid Vicious is over here. Abdullah is over here. Ron Simmons and Butch Reed, the
Oh man.
Fantastics. Terry Funk comes and sits right beside me. Now, I'm going to tell you what, there ain't no telling. I mean, when a legend like that comes and sits beside you on your first night and he has that hoarse kind of voice, hey, how are you? Good, sir. How are you? I mean, I'm thinking, where's the bathroom? I'm just going to lose it right now. Where is the bathroom? I mean,
Who'd you wrestle that first night?
oh gosh.
I did see on YouTube that you were tag teamed, and it was you. I think it was Glacier.
Ray Lloyd. Yeah.
I know him as Glacier from
Hmm.
WCW, but you fought against Sid Vicious
I fought
and
against Sid
somebody
a
else.
lot. Danny
Yeah.
Spivey. They were the
Okay.
skyscrapers and they were managed by Teddy Long.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Sid is the kind of person that, for me anyway, if he knows you're going out there and you're going to do a great job for him, do your best. I mean, really work hard. And several of the guys would ask you, I think I got something in mind. Do you think you could do this? And I've always had the ability to like look at my body as a stick figure and see how cuff, cuffing a rope in my elbow, how I can cause myself to move and twist different directions. So a lot of times I could say, yeah, I can do it. Are you sure? Yeah, this is what I'm going to do. Boom, boom. And I could just tell them within seconds how I was going to do it. Brian Pillman, we worked a lot together, and he loved that. He drop kicked me in the shoulder one time, and I was sitting on the top rope, and I worked my way down to the floor where I landed on my feet and rolled and hit the railing. Perfect landing.
Did
Uh,
you ever get to wrestle with Sting, Ric Flair, Hulk
Sting,
Hogan,
yeah.
those people?
Well, not Hogan. He was
Okay.
at that point. He was still WWF champion. Okay,
Okay.
this is before the Nitro days.
Okay.
Okay,
So it's like late '80s.
yes, it was Saturday. It was we had Saturday night the wrestling 2 hour wrestling show that was on TBS.
Yep.
We also had a show, Power Pro Wrestling. I think it came on some station on a Sunday or
Yeah, that
something
was
like
Sunday morning
that.
for me. That's right.
Sunday
That's what I
morning.
was
Okay.
watching. Yep.
But yeah, I mean, that's how it happened. My life changed. I mean, I literally went 48 hours from working against some guy I've never heard before. And because I was fairly good, I mean, the promoter would like to wrestle me. Well, see, I'm going in blindly in that kind of situation because I don't know how well the promoter's trained. I've had promoters that came within, I mean, a split second of, you know, breaking something of me because they didn't know what the heck they were doing.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a catch 22. It's a double edged sword when you can work well and you're working a small territory because you just don't know how well people are trained. Now,
How long
Mhm.
how long did you stay in WCW?
uh, 3.5 years total with them. I worked some in
Okay.
Florida, again for Dusty, and then for a guy we called Hump. He was Bam Bam Bigelow's manager at one time. He kind of looked like a leprechaun. He had the red hair and he would dress like one. They would call him Sir Oliver Humperdinck. So everybody just called him Hump. So I would go down and do TV shots for Hump. I probably did 1 year NWA. I did shots for the AWA. I did shots in Florida on two different occasions. Went down and stayed a while, and then worked WCW. And I
Okay.
had my longest stint. When I left the business, I left WCW.
Did you leave on good terms or were you injured?
No, I wasn't injured. My injuries are pretty extensive. Both hips have been pulled out of socket. Now I've got artificial hips. My right knee, I had 8 surgeries. Now the 10th one is a knee replacement that's been replaced. 10, 8 to 10 broken ribs. I've got over 30 concussions, which most wrestlers do.
Yeah.
Bone spurs in the neck and in the back. Uh, Elbow's been damaged. I may have said 2 broken shoulders. Um, I mean, a lot of injuries. Broken nose on several occasions. Broken
Yeah.
jaws, and that's from landing wrong. But
What made you decide to leave
leave.
wrestling?
It for me. What had happened was I made the fatal mistake. I had been married to a young lady for about 3 years, and I started believing that instead of being Mark Smith, the guy that wrestles, I assumed the big-headed. I took on the big-headed attitude that a wrestler needs, to go over with the crowd.
Yep.
I became the wrestler Mark Smith. So though I never hit her, verbally abusive, yes. Did I act like I cared? Not a lot. I mean, when I wrote the book Wrestling with Demons, I've had people ask me, all right, who's the bad guy in this, Mark? Is it your dad? Is it your stepdad? Who's the bad guy in this book? And I'm going to tell you, Tim, it's me.
Hmm.
I was the horse's you know what.
Yeah.
I'm the person that in wrestling, I alienated myself from my family, from everybody. Wrestling was the only thing. And the thing is, I was pretty darn good at it. And the sad thing is I believed it. So she
Did it
said,
ever did it
mhm,
did it we're gonna go back to wrestling really quickly here.
yeah,
Did it ever bother you seeing like people like Ric Flair succeed more? Ricky Steamboat, they're all succeeding. Did it ever bother you at all that that wasn't
no,
going to be your
no, no,
career?
no, not
No.
at all. Not at
Okay.
all. See, I used to call the old name for us was jobber. Now, some people today they hate that word.
Yeah.
They can now call us. We were carpenters. We helped build other careers. We were
Yep.
enhancement talent. Okay. Um, in that era, we called it the era of the giants. Because if you were over 6'4", 6'5", you were going to get a push, man. It didn't matter who you were. Well, I'm 5'11". I was 5'11", 260, 265, give or take. The thing is, I still knew and I know it today. I did what millions of people would have loved to do.
Oh, yeah, of
The
course.
thing is, I was blessed to see things, to be behind the scenes, to get to meet people, to meet legends, and understand that, you know what, they definitely paid to see Ric Flair or Ricky Steamboat. The thing is, though, is they paid because they wanted to see them win.
Yeah.
I helped them achieve that. In any enhancement talent, they help to achieve that. And if they're really good enhancement talent, they will not take cheap shots. They will respect the business. And in that, they want to see that person succeed
Yeah.
because I enjoy the fact that they're, I've got film to show my grandchildren.
Yeah.
I understand I'm a blessed man. Any ill will, no, no whatsoever. No. People there got what they deserve. God bless them. I am privileged to have had the opportunity to be there. And I mean that with all my heart.
So, what did you do after wrestling?
Well, first off, to know exactly why I left the business, a couple things, two or three things happened. Number one, my wife left me.
Yeah.
I cleaned up the apartment after she left, and I found a stick with pink on the end of it. Took that to a family member. They said, "This is a pregnancy test. It's positive." You know, I called probably at least 6 months trying to get in touch with my ex wife. I didn't know what was going on, and I still loved her. But I had no right to ask her to stay.
Yeah.
Her aunt picked up the phone one day and said, "It's been taken care of, Mark." Now, let me explain this. Number one, if anything happened, I made it happen. I drove her to that point.
Yeah.
I I accept full responsibility. I don't know if anything happened because I was never able to have a conversation. But I'm sure I'm not gonna slander her because I'm the one that made that hell on earth. That happened within a couple, 3 months. I get called to the sheriff's office. The sheriff is there and he says, "Mark, these individuals were the Georgia Bureau of Investigation." I go, "Okay, yes, sir. Gentlemen, can you leave us alone?" So they walked in another room. He pulls out a stack of tapes, old cassette tapes. He said, "Mark, you're on these tapes." I said, "Sir?" He said, "You were talking about steroids and they listed the other person I was talking to." I said, "Yes, sir." "And you mentioned names." I said, "Yes, sir." He said, "They are going to use, because you mentioned someone else's name, no matter how it was intended, because you used someone else's name, they're going to cite you for distribution. It's going to be 20 years."
Oh man.
He said, "You write down and tell me everything you know." I said, "Sheriff, I don't know much. I'll tell you, but I don't know." He said, "Just sit down and write." Well, I sat down and wrote. I was not throwing people, I didn't know much, so I was not throwing people under the bus. But I knew when I started writing, my days in the business were gone. So I wrote it. He took it, looked at it. He just sat down and looked at it for about 5 minutes. He said, "Okay." There wasn't much there. I said, "Mr. Richard," that's the sheriff. I said, "Mr. Richard, I guess I'll see you in 20."
Hmm.
He said, "Gentlemen, can you come in here?" They came in. He said, "I've known this boy, and I know he's telling the truth. Y'all can look at this. And he handed it to him. There is nothing on that piece of paper. And frankly, I know he's telling the truth. It would not benefit society one iota for him to go to a prison. They looked at it. Yeah, you're right, Sheriff. So he got a manila folder, all the papers. He put them in there. He put a rubber band back around tapes, put them in the manila folder, so it was humping up with the tapes.
Yep.
He said, now, Mark, you better not ever get to that fork in that road again. Because if you take one step in the wrong direction, all these charges will be reinstated. And people have asked me on several shows, they asked, well, did you feel great walking out? Did you really see that God was protecting you? And I'm telling them, no. I lost my life, I felt like in baseball. Now I've lost it again. I'm back to that poor, lost little boy. I walked out probably with more questions than what I walked in with. But I'd lost so much, I understood I was in a hole. And then I had to start coming to terms. And I started screaming at him. And it was, why are you doing this to me? That's how I was cut from the business. And now I'm happy I'm back in it. It's a miracle.
Yeah.
But that, now I tell you, let me ask you, how powerful was that, Tim?
I want to know what happened after you screamed at him, after screamed at God.
Are you ready?
Like, did your life change?
Okay, this is what happened. I'll tell you every bit of it. I'm glad you're asking
Yeah.
hard questions. I told you I'd be an open book, didn't I?
That's right.
All right. Tim, I walk into a hardware store a few weeks after that. Some old geezer, man, pokes me real hard in the shoulder. Pop, pop, pop. I look back. I'm thinking, who the crap are you? Son, I have a word for you. You do not have to go to school the rest of your life to be a preacher. I'm thinking, I got a word for you too. Maybe a few of them you ever poke me like that again, fella. What drugs are you on? I mean, that's what drugs are you on? My gosh.
This guy didn't know you, did he?
No. All these things that are going to happen are people that didn't know me.
Wow.
A week later or so, a woman. I didn't know. All I felt was a pop, pop, pop. 3. Always 3. Yes, ma'am. Son, I have a word for you. I'm thinking, oh God, not again. You don't have to go to school the rest of your life to be a preacher. Thank you, ma'am. Now I'm thinking, man, there's got to be some massive drugs on the street because of what these two people have just done. I want some of them. Okay, I really want them. What is it? So now, a couple of weeks later, pop, pop, pop. Son, I have a word for you. You don't have to go to school all your life to be a preacher. What these people didn't know, because they didn't know me, what they didn't know was because my mama really kind of forced me. She forced me to do it. I went to school, went to college 1 year immediately after high school. I entered the school with a 1.11 GPA for that year.
Oh, man.
I was drunk the entire year, basically. I did not realize John Hancock had signed his name real big on the Constitution. On the Declaration of Independence, Constitution, whichever one it was. I thought it was Jack Daniels. I messed up. I thought physics would teach me how to get over a hangover quicker instead of biology. I misread it. I thought it said beerology. I thought it was right up my alley. The worst case was when, and this is true, I fell over because I passed out into a keyboard. in a typing class. The professor comes over and she kind of cuffs my ears and pulls me up, being sweet to me. Mark, what is this? And I'm seeing all these scattered letters and numbers. And I say, ma'am, I'm drunk. I go, ma'am, it's Gluberschnibben. She goes, well, what is that? I said, I'm studying a foreign language. She said, son, sleep it off. She just put my head back down. That really happened. Now, at the end of the school year, you know how when you get letters from the college and they may be, we regret to inform you, things like that, or whatever, or we're excited to welcome you to our university. I got a letter from the dean, and it basically said, Mark, just go, get out, please, leave. And I jokingly, I tell people that they wanted me to leave so bad that I got a $10 gasoline scholarship just to get off campus. So see, when these people are telling me I don't have to go to school, they have no idea that I have swore up and down I'm never stepping on a campus again in my life.
Yeah.
That happened like 8 times. Then I meet my wife Brenda, and we go to church. We go to church together, and we go out on some dates. And she just up one day says, "You know what? I gotta. I something really hit me hard." I go, "What is it?" We're just dating. She said, "It's like I got a message, and it was Brenda. It you should marry a minister, and that's going to be you." I start visiting everybody, making an amends.
Yeah.
No kidding. For the next 2 months, I apologized to over 200 people, face to face. There was one final amends I needed to do. I needed to go see that dean and apologize. That's how much in my heart I wanted to get things right with everybody. So this is what happened. I go in, I ask for the dean, they let me right in. They She says, well, son, why are you here? And I explained to her I was here, the 1.11 GPA deal. I said, my life has changed. I've accepted Jesus. My faith is just changing. Wow. And I knew I needed to come by here and tell you I'm sorry. She said, you really just came down here to say you're sorry? I go, yes, ma'am. She started crying. She said, Mark, there's one thing I want you to do for me. I said, yes, ma'am. She said, go to the bookstore, get books, and start class tomorrow. She thought she was doing me a favor. I was fritzing out on the inside. I still did not want to go to school. Now, from what those people told me, and now she's telling me I'm going to school.
Yeah.
And inside I'm going, no. I'm fritzing out. I mean, I'm just having a meltdown on the inside. Meanwhile, I'm going, ma'am, thank you so much. And on the inside, you talk about a really split personality. That was a moment.
Yeah.
I had a really split personality. God had my attention because Brenda and I are dating a while. Uh, we're in the middle of a service, actually, a camp meeting. And I say a little prayer. I go, hey, uh, am I going to be single the rest of my life, or am I supposed to get married? I mean, will you kind of fill me in a little bit so I understand kind of like how to handle things? Give me a sign or something. You know, what's going to happen? The service ends before I can turn. Tap, tap, tap. Lady behind me, son, I have a word for you. Now, I look at this woman, and her hair is actually purple. She is so old. She probably dated Abe Lincoln at one point in her life. That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
She was so old when she was speaking, sawdust was coming out. That's how old she was. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, she says, I don't know what you have prayed for, but the answer is right beside you. I look to my left, and there's this really old guy. I look over here, there's Brenda, and I'm looking up and going, "Oh God, please let it be Brenda." you know? So we've been married going on 33 years.
That's awesome. And if people don't know what the symbol of the three taps is, that's the Trinity. That's the Holy
Isn't
Trinity.
that crazy?
Yeah.
3 taps.
Every time, three taps.
Mm-hmm.
It's the Father, the Son, the Holy Ghost. That's
Almost, almost the same rhythm.
crazy.
And so we were married. We have 3 children. The smallest one is about 2 years old. I get a call. We're living in Texas. I'm in Dallas. I've already left coming home. We lived about 2 hours away. Brenda calls me. I go, "What's up?" She said, "Mark, come back to Dallas quick." I go, "What?" "Come to Dallas. I'm in an ambulance." Austin started turning blue with bruises. Nobody knows what's going on.
Hmm.
They did take his blood. Mark, he has no platelets in his blood. They're trying to stop the internal bleeding. Did anything happen? No, it just started happening. So I get back to Dallas. Over the next 5 months, they tell us we have to have him padded up, everything. If he was to have skinned his knee, he would die out. He would die, bleed out before we could get him to the hospital. It was the most helpless feeling to see your baby like that, and there's absolutely nothing you can do. He would still have blotches. Over those months, he must have had 20 blood tests. Always came back zero platelets, zero platelets, zero platelets. Finally, the doctors in Dallas call us one day, and they say, "We need to talk to you." And, you know, we're about to fall to pieces. We think they're going to tell us how much time he's got left.
Yeah.
They said something happened in the middle of the night. Okay. We, the blood test this morning, or that was taken this morning, over, well, Mr. Smith, the only way we can describe it is to say it's a miracle. 300, over 300,000 platelets appeared in his blood this morning. We've never seen it. We don't know how to
Wow.
explain it. It is a miracle. Your son is healed. They use the words, "Your son is healed." So not only was I put through this unbelievable transformation with all the taps and things and everything coordinating just right, my son was instantly healed.
Wow.
So when I went to school and the seminary and I read about Tacitus, I learned about Lucian, Josephus, all these people. So many people talk about the resurrection and things like that. And I mean, the closest interview to the resurrection is like 40 years. I
Yeah.
mean, the people were right there. And what's unbelievable to me, well, it is believable now. And it's sad I had to go to school to learn it. I wish I'd learned it without having to go to school. But there's all this history that's been collaborated. And then to see, I went from a person that frankly I was a waste of humanity. I did not deserve the oxygen that I was breathing. In fact, I feel guilty for the fact I was taking it from somebody else that was probably much more deserving. But taking all this, and then what happened to me and my son, God said, son, I've given you every reason to believe, to have faith. You would have to have, it takes more faith not to believe.
Yeah.
And that's where I learned the foundation. See, when you read the story, The Three Little Pigs, Tim, we always think it's the house. We always think, oh, well, you got to have a better house, blah, blah, blah. I look at that story now, and what I see is that even the weakest house, if it would have had a firm foundation, it might have survived. And where life has its storms, if we have a foundation, like mine's God, God is love. That's what the Bible says. So my foundation is love. That's why I can look at you right now and say, brother, I love you and I appreciate you. I can do it.
Yeah.
I'm that free. But that's what taught me the importance of the foundation. So when life storms do hit me, it's going to have a lot harder time to knock me down because my foundation is strong.
And Mark, you experienced a ton of life storms. What advice do you have for parents with kids who just keep getting knocked down?
My it's I don't know. I don't remember where I heard it from. It's very simple. God does not make junk. No matter where you think you are in life, God did not make you junk. You're not junk. You may not have found that right door yet. But I look at life now like a wrestling match. When I'm down and when I get into those deep places, and man, I'm wondering how am I going to overcome it? What's the deal? I have to make sure that in my heart I make the tag, God, come on in and take over the match. Come on in and win it for me. Tim, it's amazing the number of self-help books out there. Do you know what? It hit me the other day, literally. Do you know why there are tens of thousands of self-help books? Because
I don't.
nobody's found the answer. Because they keep trying to look at
It's
the
a good
person
point.
themselves.
Yeah.
So, you know, I found a book that works. The most the most printed and the most critiqued book in the world. I found it. And by that, I found my foundation. And when I found my foundation and found out that I really did matter, I'm going to tell you what, Tim, it is freedom to know that I was meant for something. And if you're down, if you're listening to this and you're beaten down and you're going, God, what do I do? God is exactly what to do. Tag him in.
Mark, I love it. We're wrapping up here to our end
Okay,
of our podcast here. Mark, if people want to get a hold of you or follow you, how can they do that?
sure. My Facebook is Ira Mark Smith. If you want to hit me up with a friend request, I'm going to tell you what, I'm going to check you out. There's some weirdos out there.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'll check you out. But, you know, I do accept a lot of friends. Uh, Also, our website is www.wrestlingwithdemonsmith. Wrestling with Demons Smith. That's two S's, Demons Smith, two S's,
Yep.
.com. And our book has now gone also into Kindle. It's much more affordable because then you don't have to pay for the shipping and all that kind of stuff. Mark Smith, by Mark and Brenda Smith, Wrestling with Demons. And I am currently writing Wrestling with God because wrestling with God is a beautiful thing. And so,
Mark.
yeah, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
No, I was
No, go
just,
ahead.
oh,
Finish it up.
okay. Again, thank you for your time. Tim is an awesome guy. And when he brings things like this, and I know he's brought you other people, this right here shows it's a labor of love. Please drop him a line. Let him know how he's blessing you because he needs encouragement as well. He's the real deal, and he has been so courteous. Tim, thank you so much. I appreciate you. I love all of you. Thank you, Tim.
Thank you, Mark.